first thing you do when you do any major automotive work is you want to disconnect the battery. We're going to do that by disconnecting the ground strap. That way we can be safe.
Well, since we got that battery undone, the next thing you want to do is disconnect the skid plate.
Okay, these are loose because we've already loosened and removed the skid plate. So you can pull these down out of the way. Don't forget, on newer synchros and synchros only, you're going to have this tube which protects the shifter. 10mm bolt there, you want to remove that. This one will come down also. And then it's just the 4 bolts here on the drive shaft flange. These are already loose. Remove these. And sometimes you might have to tap this with a hammer to loosen it, but this one should be good to go. There you go. Next, you're going to want to remove the shift linkage where it's bolted to the transmission. There's 2 bolts here. Pull those out, 13mm. And when you remove the shift linkage from the ball up here, there's a rubber boot. Make sure you don't tear it when you're pulling it down. Whether your CV axle bolts are a 6mm Allen or an M8 triple square, before you start, you want to make sure that you clean out the heads of these bolts with a pick. Tends to be a lot of mud or wax from the factory in there. You want to take that out and clean it out completely, and then hammer the bit in before you start to turn and loosen. Once you get it loose, and you get all the axle bolts out and down, pull the CV out of the way, go into your kitchen, get a plastic bag, put it around the CV joint to keep it clean. 2 bags will do fine, and then tape it up tight with some regular masking tape. While we're here, we're going to get the vacuum lines disconnected from the diff lock actuator if your synchro has one. And before you pull the hoses off, there's 2 hoses. There's 3 different colors. So just mark which hose came from where, and that'll answer any questions that you might have later on.
Now we're going to start disconnecting stuff from inside the engine bay. First thing we're going to do is remove this air box. On a synchro, you're going to want to undo the Phillips head screw. There's a zip tie here. There's the wire for the mass air meter. There's a hose clamp here, and this one clip. Once you've got all that done, this should just pull up and out. Now that the air box is out, we're going to want to start cutting some of these zip ties which held the old wiring harness up into place. Don't worry about cutting too many zip ties. You won't need any of these. If your van's got cruise control, after the zip ties, you're going to want to remove the cruise control unit. Next, you're going to want to remove the passenger side rear tail light. The 4 screws that hold it in place. Once you've got those screws out, there's the wiring harness behind. Disconnect that. Set the tail light aside. Once you remove the rear tail light, there's 1 screw back there you have to remove, which is part of the snorkel on a synchro. Take that screw out. Then there's 4 clips that hold this block-off panel in place. Get these 4 clips off. Pull this panel out of place. And we're good to go. Well, now what do we have here? Something very common on a lot of Vanagons. Mouse nest, or something like it. Maybe they have big mice out in Wyoming. Get that out of there, clean it up, vacuum it up, don't stir it up, because the dust can be very unhealthy for you. And keep on going. First thing you're going to want to do behind this tail light, or another thing you're going to want to do behind this tail light, is remove the wiring harness that runs back here to the idle stabilizing unit. Once you get this loosened out, this will give you a good starting point so that you know where to and what part of the wiring harness you need to remove. And the reality of it is you're going to end up removing all of this here. All this will be gone when we're done. You want to remove the wires from the back of the alternator. Typically it's a 13mm nut for the main wire, which runs over to the AC unit, and the 2 wires that run back to the battery. And there's also a small blue field wire which is attached to the alternator with an 8mm nut. Once you get all those done, you're good. While you're still in this area, you can also remove all these other plugs that we're not going to need. Anything you see in this area, you can discard.
Alright, next we're going to go after the cooling system, which of course has to be drained, and we don't want to make a huge mess. So I like to cheat a little bit. We clean out the wet dry vac so that we can take the fluid back out of it. We just vacuum every part of the system we can. Alright, go for it, man.
Next thing you can do after Jim is, not that Jim will come to your house, but the next thing you can do after you've vacuumed out the coolant system is remove this upper bleeder hose. You can just cut all these hoses where they attach to the whole upper ring type thing. There's another zip tie we missed. There you go. Some of these are plastic, some of them are metal on the older ones. This heat shield on the passenger side we're going to remove, and we're going to keep it, and you're going to reuse it on the Z-Tech installation. So once you get this guy down, don't get rid of it, keep it around. Once you get that done, there's 6 bolts along the back here that you have to get out. Get those out, and then remove the bolt on the other heat shield on the other side. Alright, I've removed the throttle cable, which comes up underneath these 2 crossover pipes with an 8mm socket. Once you get that loose, pull that out. Then there's 2 large bolts, 17mm nuts and bolts. You want to undo those, which go through this crossover pipe, and you want to undo the hose clamps which hold these 2 coolant hoses onto this end of the crossover pipe. Once that's all loose and off, you can remove that, and then this bracket will have already fallen. There's a clip on it. You'll undo the clip, and that'll free the throttle cable from this bracket, and you're good. After you've loosened this and removed this piece, the crossover pipe, you want to put that large bolt back into place. There's another one just like it on the opposite side. You want to put that back in place. That's going to hold this bracket for the clutch slave cylinder. Clutch slave cylinder has 2 13mm bolts. They're very difficult to get to. You have to have a wrench underneath and another wrench on top. The other bolt hole you can do from the underside of the van with a ratchet and a long extension and a box wrench on the top side. Once those 2 bolts are off, you can remove the slave cylinder, and it's free of the transmission. And since you've unbolted the whole slave cylinder from its mounting bracket, there's no need to open up this line and let air into the system. If you do that, you're going to have to bleed the whole system. It's easier just to undo the 2 bolts, take the unit off as a whole. Don't even open it up. You're going to want to remove the power steering lines from the power steering pump on the Waterboxer. Before you loosen any of these bolts, make sure there's a catch basin underneath the motor so you don't have fluid go all over the ground. First bolt you're going to want to remove is the one on top of the pump. It's 22mm. When you remove it, make sure you don't lose the 2 crush washers that are there. They're both copper, so if you drop them in your oil, you won't be able to pick them up with a magnet. This is what they look like here. Once you get that out of the way, you can go ahead and remove the other end of the line. This is just the return line. We've already disconnected the fuel lines. Both on a synchro and a 2-wheel drive, you'll see here the fuel pressure regulator. The line that comes off of this is the return line. This other line is the send line from the tank. On a synchro, it comes out here, is attached at this brass fitting, and this is where you disconnect it. On a 2-wheel drive van, in this area there's a plastic nipple. That's where you'll disconnect the fuel line. When you initially remove the engine, you'll leave that plastic piece. Once everything is out and out of your way, you can then go in and remove that plastic nipple. Okay, we've already loosened the clamp on this vacuum line here. This is for the brake booster.
This is the same for two-wheel drives and for synchros. Once that clip is off there, you pull the hose off the nipple, just back it up this way, and you're good. We've loosened the 6 bolts here that hold the rear of the transmission to the body of the car. And before we loosened them, we used a floor jack to take the weight of the transmission off the car. Once the jack is in place, loosen these 6 bolts. If you lower the jack a bit, the transmission should tip. And once it does that, stop. Now we're about ready to lower the engine out of the vehicle. We have a floor or an engine hoist. If you don't have one available to you, you can use a 4x4 across the engine bay with 2 ratchet straps. We loosen the 4 bolts that hold the engine cradle to the body of the vehicle. Now that that's done, all of the weight is being supported by the engine hoist.
Alright, so now I'm going to help Brady lower the whole assembly, the engine and the transmission, out of the synchro all at once here. You're going to want to make sure that, and this is what one of the things he's working with down there, is make sure that the CV shafts, now that they're loose, don't get hung up on the transmission that's now going to be dropping between them, basically. And you're going to want to bring them up and over and make sure they're clearing everything and get them above the transmission so we can get that whole assembly out of there. So I'm manning this. I'm manning the hoist, and he's on the floor jack that's supporting the transmission. So, you ready?
Yeah, I'm good.
Alright. I'm going to lower this a little bit.
Okay. And just keep an eye out for any wires we missed up there.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is you want to keep an eye on the engine bay and everything, make sure there's no wires still attached to anything, because they won't be if they are. Let's see. Yeah, we're looking pretty good. It looks like
We should be pretty good there.
yeah, I think we're good. You want to lower the jack a little bit more?
Yep. I'm good here. Okay, you can bring your end down.
I think I'm on the... Okay. Watch the CD on this side.
Should be good.
This side CV needs to come a little bit. Yeah,
it's straight.
back. How's that looking?
Yeah, we're good. We're done. We're done.
Is that good?
Yep.
All right. So now there it is. So now the whole engine and transmission assembly is sitting on these wheels, and we'll get it up out of. We'll pull it out of the way, and you guys can see what it looks like. Ready to go, Brady?
Yep.
All right. Let's give it a go. Ready? Yep. Set. Go.
I really can't push too much in there. There you go.
Here it comes.
There it is.
Is that breather line still hooked up here?
Yep.
Oh, all right. There you go.
Yeah, this line will run up. Where's Kim? This line will run up along the gas tank. I want to just snake that out, but leave it attached to the transmission.
All right.